Within a tone unit is the same as a word group, the way we break up the stretch of speech into units for intonation purposes. Well, within a tone unit, the first accented syllable we call the onset, and the last accented syllable we call the nucleus. And of these two, the nucleus is the more important. So what we're looking for is the last accented syllable, the last syllable that has both pitch prominence and rhythmic stress. That's the nucleus. And when we're choosing an intonation pattern for what we say, the most important decision that we make is where to place the nucleus. This choice, this decision, is sometimes referred to as tonicity, following Halliday's terminology. So the question of nucleus placement or tonicity. And usually, it's at the end. Here are some examples then on the handout. Underline the nucleus to draw your attention to it. For example, we're just getting ready, we're planning our journey, and I say, when do you think we ought to leave? When do you think we ought to leave? The last pitch prominent accented syllable then is leave. When do you think we ought to leave? Leave. There's that pitch movement and the rhythmic stress. When do you think we ought to leave? Where was the onset? When? When do you think we ought to leave? Now, many people listening and analysing this may hear the onset as perhaps more prominent than the nucleus. What's important for the meaning is the nucleus. I could make the nucleus stand out very much. When do you think we ought to leave? But usually we don't do this. When do you think we ought to leave? Leave is still the nucleus. You try and say it like I do. When do you think we ought to leave? When do you think we ought to leave? Again? When do you think we ought to leave? Now, leave there was also the final syllable. But quite often there are other unstressed syllables that follow the nucleus. As in the next example, we ask them to give us one. We ask them to give us one. You try it. We ask them to give us one. Now, one, of course, is a dummy pronoun. Us is a pronoun. English pronouns are typically unaccented. So the expected place for the nucleus in a sentence like this is indeed on the verb give. We ask them to give us one. We ask them to give us one. We ask them to give us one. Typical foreigner's error. We ask them to give us one. That would imply a contrast with 2 or 3 or 4. But unless you want that contrast, we're talking about, I don't know, pens. We're giving out pens. We ask them to give us one. We don't need to emphasize it. Someone says, do you think it's going to snow tomorrow? I might answer, well, I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. The nucleus there is thought. So is not accented. Why not? Doesn't tell you anything. So just means the proposition you've just put forward. These things. So in English, I wouldn't have thought so. Nucleus is going to be on thought. You tried. I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. Notice that have gets reduced to its weak form of I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. How many accented syllables there altogether? 2. Wouldn't thought. I wouldn't have thought so. And again, notice the lack of accent pronouns, I, and on other little grammatical words, function words like have. I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. 2 accented syllables. The second one then is the nucleus. You can't be sure. You can't be sure. Again, one accent on can't, one on sure. You can't be sure. Try it. You can't be sure. You can't be sure. You just transcribe that. What was I saying? Can't be sure. That's what I said. You can't be sure. You can't be sure. Notice, it could be can't, but it's often assimilated before the B and B. Weak form B, weak form U. Sure, antiquated pronunciation, sure. Nowadays, much more usually sure. So, is not wrong, but or is the usual one nowadays. You can't be sure. You can't be sure. You can't be sure. And the last example we've got here with two parts, two word groups, two tone units, as we're now calling them. One intonation pattern for the first one, and one for the second. If only I'd asked him, he'd certainly have come. If only I'd asked him, he'd certainly have come. In the first part there, if only I'd asked him, how many accented syllables? If only I'd asked him, two of them. The latter one is asked. If only I'd asked him. If only I'd asked him. If only I'd asked him. Yes, if only I'd asked him, he'd certainly have come. He'd certainly have come. He'd certainly have come. Again, two accented syllables, certainly and come. He'd certainly have come. Putting it together, if only I'd asked him, he'd certainly have come. If only I'd asked him, he'd certainly have come. Right, so we typically find the nucleus near the end. And yet typically the nucleus highlights new information. Sometimes when we speak, everything we say is new. But I have to point out that very often when we speak, much of what we say is not new, it's something that the other person already knows about. Intonation enables us to distinguish between what is new and what is given, what is familiar, what is not new information.